We do a cold read through of the best news aggregate for the unobscured eye on current events. I'd like to thank BCF for posting these live streams and for his tireless commitment to publishing a site every day, coming up on 20 years in February. As you may be aware, BCF has just had a fundraiser. Fundraiser, fundraiser. Please support his site. We are streaming on three platforms, Rumble, X, and CommuTube. So please like, thumbs up, follow, and share, and subscribe. And most of all, the chat is up. So please feel free to ask anything. Please keep it clean and don't be abusive. Comments drive the algorithm. When I'm not driving the algorithm down with forbidden words. After the live stream, please join us on the NAP, the No Answer Period at 10:30, where we cover the question period, prefaced by a review of the far left evil that has beset our land and the events that surround it. The NAP is a daily show, so please join us 45 minutes before question period or until government decides to stop showing up in the lower house. So, let's go. Here we are, blazing cat fur. First thing we'll do is we'll do a quick refresh. And access denied. Let me get right back to you. I forgot to turn off my VPN. It's the strangest thing, really, because this VPN I have, I keep inserting Blazing Cat for his web address, and it uses it all week. And the one, as soon as I go to do a show, boom, it just blocks it. Anyway, oh, look at this. We're up right on the site. Outstanding. Let's move on to the next first story. Possessed by Demons by Hazel Appleyard, a post on X that BCF has put on his site. And Hazel says this person is absolutely insufferable.
This is the neighborhood, and you are not welcome.
That's why I need to be here. You need Jesus, ma'am. He can save you. He can give you a new heart. God can give you a new heart so that you love what God loves. No, that's irrational.
Oh, my Lord. That's quite disturbing. Well, I guess this is the product of today's education system. Is this in Canada? Probably is. This is still the funniest edits I've ever seen. Oh, this should be good.
This is the neighborhood, and you are not welcome.
Perfectamundo. That's exactly how you do it. When the crazy go crazy, you mock the crazy. Law enforcement warned about radicalization on Discord before Charlie Kirk murder. Exactly. The Department of Homeland Security had warned about radicalization threats posed to young audiences within certain online platforms such as Discord over 7 months before the murder of Charlie Kirk. The warning came in January intelligence assessment, according to documents shared with the Washington Examiner. It's strange that you have all these really smart people in all these various departments, and none of them seem to have studied history, where every example of far left lunacy, when they get radicalized, when they start protesting, when they start trying to take over governments in the past, they've always done it through intimidation and violence. Now, of course, the Marxist takeover of various governments has been done by slowly placating in a slow, very drip manner so that people didn't really realize how slowly all their freedoms were being taken away. Like they often say, suddenly, no, is it slowly, slowly, then suddenly you were there. And I think we're almost there in Canada in that sense. Alberta church burned to the ground. Two Aboriginal suspects charged after dangerous RCMP chase. I wonder if they're out on bail. Smoky Lake, RCMP have arrested two people in connection with a string of vehicle thefts and a fire that destroyed the All Saints Ukrainian Orthodox Church in Belize, Alberta. The arrests come after a dramatic police pursuit involving erratic driving, bear mace, and a vehicle ramming a police. So there are a lot of old Ukrainian churches and chapels all through the West. I don't know if most Canadians still remember their history where there were a lot of Ukrainian settlements where people from Ukraine came and settled all throughout West, established farms, and with that, of course, they brought their culture and their religion and set up these chapels. You have chapels sitting around on various lands that are just opened up for the late spring through the summer and into the fall because they were never designed with the modern infrastructure that's sitting out there. But now you have older churches like this. Well, we all know that the Ukrainians no longer represent the significant portion of our population and affecting our culture like they did prior to the Liberals coming in 2015 and changing the entire makeup of our culture in Canada, bringing replacements in, driving the others out with people fleeing. I've just seen a video the other day. They were reporting probably 1 million Canadians have left since 2015. That's way further than the numbers. There was an average of, so they were saying 30 to 40,000 a year, and then at 2020 that number doubled. So if that's 1 million, I'm not sure. With Trump back on side, Ukraine is turning the tables on Russia. In the eyes of Donald Trump, Vladimir Zelensky was once the wartime leader without any cards to play. Yet, after a private meeting between the two presidents on Wednesday, the American proclaimed Ukraine is in a position to fight and win. A short time earlier, Mr. Zelensky said he had some good news from the battlefield to share with Mr. Trump. The US president appeared to agree, describing a Russian economy in free fall and praising the strengths of Ukraine's armed forces for resisting an invasion that should have ended victory within 4 days. I see we're still not talking about the butcher's bill in any of these stories. Nobody's mentioning the 1.7 million casualties that Ukraine has suffered, and that includes wounded men that will never ever be able to function on in a military aspect ever again, and the missing and the dead. That's 1.7 million casualties. But they won't release their real figures. They are conscripting 60-year-olds in Ukraine, so I do not know where this Ukraine armed forces is coming from, or how he expects to be in a position to fight and win if he doesn't have any troops in the boots from that country to defend their own country. This is all very, very, very bad. We studied World War One and World War Two and the Korean War, but mostly World War One. A lot of World War One in history when I went through school in Canada, and it seems like a lot of those lessons from then are just being ignored, including ignoring the butcher's bill. Only one province in Canada showed decline in populations. New Stats Canada data shows that apart from the surge in 2022, 2023, and 2024, this spring saw more immigrants arrive in Canada than any second quarter since 1957. BC was the only province in Canada where the population declined between April and June, while the province's birth rate remains the lowest in the country, according to New Statistics Canada data that shows the impact of changing federal immigration policy on BC's population. The drop is the other side of the surge in the number of temporary residents who came to BC over the last 3 years, said Werner Antweiler, a business professor at the University of BC. Many of those people are now leaving as their work and study permits expire. Well, the left, we've always said, will eat themselves. The whole aspect of establishing feminism in the West to get women to think that working their entire life is a normal thing and ignoring their biological clock along the way to pursue different things to make them happy other than family has led to a birth rate fall. Now you will see far left crazy people screaming about their birth canals and conservatives wanting to turn them into baby factories and blah blah blah. We don't really care what you do with your body. That's the whole point. We respect bodily autonomy. We're just stating the facts. You're not having babies. Country's going to die. Unfortunately, we're already there. Birth rate is far in decline. People have not been having kids, especially for the past 10 years since the liberals have taken over, destroying the economy, making it near impossible for people to feed kids, let alone themselves. And what do the liberals do? Oh, well, let's give the kids government approved sandwiches, ignoring the fact that most provinces already have a food program that they are just going to piggyback on, and also ignoring the fact that every time they promote their food program at the schools that the government is providing, they are also boasting that they have destroyed the economy to the point where parents cannot even feed their children and have to depend upon the state. But they celebrate this. They celebrate that as they celebrate the declining birth rate in Canada so that they can replace the population with more malleable economic slaves. Toronto's real estate latest record? Distressed listings. Forget building wars. Distressed listings are Toronto's real estate hottest trend. Power of sale listings have surged more than fivefold in 3 years, according to data from Valerie Real Estate. A record volume of distressed sellers are flooding record inventory, shredding the narrative of a quick recovery. It's a brutal reminder that real estate corrections are measured in years, not months. It's true. You have a big gap in real estate. It's strange because you have all these condos that can't even complete. People are on the hook. People have purchased condos for far more than what they should have. When do we start seeing this rise in, oh yes, right after the Liberals were brought into power in 2015, then everybody's property values started to massively spike and increase to the point where people would just get out of the military rather than take a posting or being forced into a posting into an area where they couldn't even afford to buy a house, and let alone they couldn't even go there with their family because there was no base housing available for them for at least a couple of years. And for some of them, the prospect of having to work separated from their family until they could afford to bring them down there is the reality in Canada. And that was back then. And I can only imagine it's even worse now for poor people working in the government if they have to be posted around, especially our poor military folk. It's insane what they've done. Justice Department official pushes prosecutors to investigate George Soros Foundation. Oh, really? Well, that was it Tides Foundation? Is that the one that the Trudeau government has made a deal with? This is enshrined within our own government policy. They've been working in cahoots with this guy, and this guy's been doing a lot of nasty stuff, funding various organizations on the side. And it's nice to see that the Department of Justice in the United States is finally going to expose more of this. Although that didn't really help us with Carney when they took him to task for his climate scam cartel in the GFANS DOJ inquiries. We still haven't heard any outcome from those inquiries. It's like they've just been put on pause for the moment, just to, let Carney step on his phallus. A senior Justice Department official has instructed more than a half a dozen of U.S. attorney offices to draft plans to investigate a group funded by George Soros, the billionaire Democrat donor whom President Trump has demanded be thrown in jail. The official's directive, a copy of which was reviewed by the New York Times, suggests department leaders are following orders from the president that specific people or groups be subjected to criminal investigations, a major break from decades of past practice meant to insulate the Justice Department from political interference. Well, the New York Times, as BCF writes here, is always okay with whatever Soros does. Right? It's the New York slime, as they've also called it, were probably not upset whenever, let's say, the Obamas, when they were in power for 8 years, uh, continually went after Tea Party members, the precursor to the MAGA movement, all those political, and then of course, were they talking about all the political interference that the Biden administration did, going after every single person that worked or supported with Trump in and out of the government? It was amazing the amount of lawfare that they put these people through. And now, of course, now they're crying, "Oh, poor me." Well, look who started it. Apple pauses its new show about domestic terrorism. Well, yeah, maybe that wasn't a good idea to have a domestic terrorist show that shows sympathy for terrorism. I'm just assuming. I haven't seen this show. So it appears Apple TV Plus was going to release a new show this Friday called The Savant. The show stars actress Jessica Chastain, an investigator who profiles and identifies would-be domestic terrorists in an attempt to stop them before they commit violent crimes. Hmm. Profile, eh? Like profiling people online that say hurty words and then throw them in jail like they do in the UK. Shout out to Katie Hawkins. I think she just got arrested again. But today, Apple announced it would be postponing the release of the show. Apparently, out of concern, the subject matter is too raw after the assassination of Charlie Kirk. Well, what that tells me there's probably a lot of far left ideological considerations that maybe minimize the ethical ramifications of using violence for your own political means. Maybe that's why. Maybe a little self-introspection is needed in your writer's room. Hollywood remains detached from reality and sees only one type of terrorism, of course, says BCF. Nearly 6 million Canadians on medical wait lists as delays outpace pandemic backlog report. Really? I'm not surprised, seeing as over 76,000 Canadians have died on medical wait lists just to be seen or to get to see a specialist or for medical treatment. And that was the last number released, so I'm sure it's far worse now. And every one of those deaths are as a result of this liberal government destroying our society through mass, uncontrolled immigration. This is not the immigrants' fault. This is the government's fault. They opened the doors. Even when Trump came in the last time and Trudeau was saying, "Oh, well, if you feel bad, we'll just come on in." And sure they did. They certainly did. And just massively backed everything up. And now here we are. And then, of course, what didn't help in our medical system, right? The great COVIDity, stupidity, where doctors, healthcare workers, nurses, people throughout departments, throughout society were turned into second-class citizens if they didn't take the injection. And a lot of them lost their jobs, especially in the medical system, where they're still insisting that they take it in various parts of Canada. It's insane. You still have to take this jab in some places to keep it, even in the military. Canadian Forces Directive 003. And with this, you've pissed a lot of medical workers off. And even some of them were asked to come back in some areas where they say, "Oh, yeah, well, you don't need to get it now." Well, no. You have the same monsters and abusers in positions of authority just ready to do it again. So when I see people talking about backlogs, let's make sure that they're talking about all the various things that brought this to fruition under the Liberals, because this was not a thing before 2015. Nearly 6 million Canadians are currently on a healthcare waiting list, surpassing levels recorded in the aftermath of COVID-19 scamdemic. And I'm not going to call it a pandemic. I don't believe it was a pandemic. A new report suggests. Everyone said it was a pandemic and they insisted it was a pandemic. But realistically, the death rates only started to soar after the injections started. Government data obtained by think tank secondstreet.org indicated at least 3.7 million Canadians are waiting for surgery. And by the way, that data of people death spiking after the injection, we've covered this on the NAP. This is Canada's own data. This is Stats Canada data, irrefutable. The government data obtained by think tank secondstreet.org indicated that at least 3.7 million Canadians are waiting for surgery, a diagnostic scan, or to see a specialist. But the organization is suggesting figures from Canada's provinces and territories may not tell the full story. Oh, well, yeah, for sure. Since I've left the military, since I was released, refusing to take the injection, apparently I was said, "Oh yeah, I'm a higher priority because of this and that, blah blah blah." Yeah, well, I just talked to medical services again last week. Yeah, still on a waiting list. Still on a waiting list. How many years ago was that? When was I released? Oh yes, February 2021. 2022, sorry. It's all starting to fuzz together. The long twilight struggle. We seek no treasure. We seek no territorial gains. We seek only the right of man to be free. We seek his right to worship his God, to lead his life in his own way, secure from persecution, as the humble laborer returns from his work when the day is done, and sees the smoke curling upwards from his cottage home in the serene evening sky. We wish him to know that no rat-tat-tat of the secret police upon his door will disturb his leisure or interrupt his rest. This was Prime Minister Winston Churchill explaining Great Britain's war aims to FDR's close advisor, Harry Hopkins, January 11, 1941, but the Ditchley in England as quoted in Eric Larson, the splendid and the vile, which is very apt, very Churchillian to put this today as more and more people continue to be arrested in the UK for simply saying something that offended somebody else. And when they come to your door and they come to arrest you without warrant, you don't even get to know who your accuser is. And guess what, folks? Bill C9 that is being introduced here in Canada has exactly that in there. Oh, they couch it in nice little words of, let's make sure we're dealing with hate. The thing is, there are already laws on the books to deal with this. The government chooses not to in order to create a crisis so that they can introduce this draconian legislation, whereby the Attorney General is no longer needed. His consent is not needed. That means it's a warrantless arrest. They just make up a reason, find somebody to be offended. They come and knock on your door and they say, hey, you violated the Bill C9, so we're coming to take you away. And you go, what? Where's your warrant? Oh, we don't need a warrant. This act gives us the right just to show up and take you away. And off you go. And then when you go in front of a judge, you'd be like, they don't even have a warrant to arrest me. Well, I'm looking at the act here, and you don't need a warrant to be arrested. Well, I want to know who accused me. Well, I'm looking at the act here, and you don't get to know who accused you. Oh, but this is ridiculous. Because somebody's offended, you're going to throw me in jail. As a matter of fact, yes, we're going to throw you in jail for 5 years. Case closed, bang, and then off you go. That's what we're looking forward to right here in Canada under the Liberals, under Bill C9. So what Churchill said right here, that is the future just around the corner in Canada that we see happening in the UK today. And if Canadians don't wake the foxtrot up, they're going to be surprised in a very nasty way. The insane two-tier bias of Britain's speech police. Oh my goodness, there I was just talking about that. This is how much of a cold read-through it is. I did not check this website before we started doing our half-hour show that we only have 7 minutes on. So, the insane two-tier bias of Britain's speech police. In response to the killing of conservative commentator Charlie Kirk earlier this month, British social media influencer Charlotte Hayes posted a video on TikTok appearing to celebrate his death. Oh, yes, the far left sickos who have no morals, no values, have been instructed in cultural Marxism that virtue signaling is also okay if it is done in a way that virtue signals so you can celebrate people's death as long as you're virtue signaling your ideological cause. That's how sick the far left cultural Marxists are.
Pro-gun advocate Charlie Kirk just got shot in the neck at his own debate rally. I try to avoid American politics if possible, but I've opened X to a bunch of little bitches crying and whinging about how political violence is never the answer. These people are gunning for politics that is inherently violent to its people. These people are gunning for politics that are inherently violent to a population. To marginalised people, to people who need access to healthcare. This is the same across the West. This isn't just the US. This is England too. I'm sick of this idea that you can't meet violence with violence. If somebody was smacking you in the face in the corner of a room over and over, you're going to hit them back. You have to. You're not getting out of that.
Yeah, these people are insane. They have been programmed to believe that words are violence and that therefore actual physical violence is an acceptable reaction. This is why they're crazy. They've been taught this way. We warned decades ago the way the education systems were being changed in the West to slowly bring in Marxist ideology. Well, here's the byproduct right there. You've taken away ethics and values out of the classroom in various places where it's at least existed in some portion, and now has been replaced with what? Land acknowledgements and adherence to diversity, equity, and inclusion, which always ensure that one person is more equal than others. Ted Morton, Carney's first 6 months of disappointment. Well, we all, man, I wish there was a betting thing that I could have gone on. I would have made a mint. I would have made a mint betting on the failure of liberals my entire life. I should have been bloody rich. It's not hard to be a soothsayer. Just know them by what they do. Just look in the past, right? They will repeat the same thing over and over again. Corporate needs you to find the difference between this picture and this picture. Mm, so far, only one of them is divorced. The new prime minister was entitled to a 6 month honeymoon to prove that he would be different. Yeah. Well, Mark Carney has now had 6 months on the job. What does he have to show for it? No doubt many Canadians still view him as a man of substance, a welcome reprieve from the man of shallow spectacle who preceded him. That is a very low bar. As every school teacher and employer knows, evaluating performance is important. You can't improve what you don't track. The Buffalo Project has launched an advertising campaign and a website, reportoncarney.ca, to answer the bottom line question: are Canadian social and economic circumstances seeing actual improvement? Well, I would also like to point everyone over to a website. I believe it is, oh, let me bring it up here. Just let me go for a quick, because while we're talking about um, going to websites that are reporting on Carney, this is probably the most intense site that you're going to go to, and it is continually being updated by another podcaster. His name is Moose on the Loose. Let's bring ourselves back up here. And Public Moose on Loose. Why? If you go to one of his videos, you will find the link in the website. I thought for sure it would be up here, but it seems to. He's got the site mirrored on .ca and .coms. I wish I knew what it was. Nukes. It's not there. Anyway, he has all of Mark Carney's assets and everything related to all his assets in there. And that's all the government rules and regulations that have been put in since he started becoming Trudeau's advisor, all his stock holdings, all the businesses he's invested in. So as you see each policy the Liberals bring in, you can see how they are closely connected to each of his friends in some way or another in the past, or how they are connected to past business aspects. And you can see it's this massive spider web of insider corruption and people greasing each other's palms. And I think the worst of all is the most recent inclusion of, again, more spending on failed EV plants, right? Oh, this has been updated. I would have to do a refresh. But there's been another EV plant here, another $13 billion, right? So you want to report on Carney, start combing through this on your own, and you will find so many connections. Now, he's slowly putting in which ones he's verifying it, because the list of all the investments that he's had, a lot of it's not populating here, but the list of all the investments he has, he's he's going through it bit by bit, because some of the information has is a little older, right? So he has to go back and ensure that, you know, does he own those shares back then? Does he still own them today? And then of course he goes through and goes, yeah, still owns them. So this whole ethical screen thing is a complete sham, right? Because the ethical screener himself said, well, it's he's not getting it today. This is something for the future, where you will look at it then. But it's like, what? What? What are you saying? Are you saying it's not an ethical breach because he's not collecting the money today, but after he quits being prime minister, then he collects it? But that's okay. These people are bloody insane. Let's get back to Blazing Catford. Well, the new prime minister was entitled, yes, he was. So every adult in Britain will need a government-issued ID card despite backlash at Starmer's plan for dystopian nightmare. That's right, he's bringing that in today. Yeah, it's 1984. They have done bloody everything in Britain to completely destroy Britain, going after their farmers, inundating their country with uncontrolled mass migration, replacing, making it too poor for them to feed or house themselves, having to depend more on government subsidies. And then, of course, if you uh, if you go against the state, well, we've seen what they've done to Tommy Robinson because he started his battle 20 years ago. He's got, he's got a lot of time now uh, and experience. So, of course, he's gotten a larger political footprint, but they don't care, right? If they could, they would arrest them the next day and make them disappear and let them die in a jail cell, and they wouldn't care, and nobody would ever be held accountable because, insofar, they have not been held accountable for anything that's been going on there, just like here in Canada. And guess what? This is also going on in Australia. Yeah, interesting, eh? The Victor Davis Hanson video, Western civilization has reached its turning point after Charlie Kirk's death. Yes, it definitely is a turning point. And what has happened is the Overton window has shifted. It has shifted, but there's still people hanging on to the edge of the window frame, and they're like, no, we don't want to come to the window, and they're slowly being left behind, but they're still hanging on to their old ideas, right? So this could be a good video to watch later, but we are running out of time here on Blazing Cat for Fridays, and there it is. That is the very last story. Well, how long is this video? It's 8 minutes.
Something is happening in the United States, I think worldwide too. It's almost as if there were fuel and the death of Charlie Kirk ignited it. It's not a George Floyd movement at all or moment. We've talked about that. It's very different. It's building up frustration. It's not a top-down DEI mandate. Thousands of people are commemorating the death of Charlie Kirk. There's no tolerance for the usual left-wing socialist craziness, the abhorrent, violent smears of conservatives who've died. We're witnessing large-scale demonstrations in Ireland, Great Britain. The government of France has fallen. There is unrest in the Netherlands. It's a grassroots kind of collective shrug throughout Western civilization. And I guess it could be characterized as enough is enough.
Indeed, enough is enough soon, because as history has proven, once people's stomachs kick in, once you stop feeding them, that's when the riots start. I mean, unless, of course, you just arbitrarily just cut off all social network access and then they come over and burn down your parliament like they did out in Tibet. But so far, that's not Canada yet. We're not there, but we are at the precipice. Please come and join us on the nap at 10:30. If not, we will see you next week here on BCF. Thank you again if you've all watched to the end. As a Mr. Transition.